Marcus Chen pressed his face against the observation window of the research vessel Endeavor, watching the alien planet grow larger on the screen. His heart raced with excitement. After 15 years of studying alien life forms from old recordings and fossil remains, he was finally going to meet a living alien species face to face. "Remember, Dr. Chen," Captain Rodriguez said over the communication system, "this is just a peaceful meeting. The Veltar have agreed to talk with us on the planet's surface. Keep your hands visible at all times and move slowly." Marcus nodded and checked his translation device one more time. The small computer had been programmed with basic Veltar language patterns, though the alien words still sounded strange and harsh to his ears. He grabbed his research kit and headed to the shuttle bay. The planet below looked beautiful, from space. Green forests covered most of the surface, with silver rivers running between tall mountains. According to their scans, the air was safe to breathe and the temperature was comfortable. It seemed like the perfect place for a peaceful first meeting between humans and the Veltar. Marcus climbed into the small shuttle with 2 security officers. The trip to the planet's surface took 30 minutes. As they landed in a clearing, near a forest, Marcus saw the Veltar ship on the other side of the open space. It was black and shaped like a sharp blade, very different from the round human ships. "Stay close, Doctor," said Officer Williams, one of the security team members. "We don't know much about their customs yet." Marcus stepped out of the shuttle and felt the alien sun on his face. The air smelled like pine trees and flowers. Birds sang in the distance, though they probably weren't really birds. Everything seemed peaceful and welcoming. Then he saw her. The alien warrior stepped out from behind her ship and walked toward them. She was tall, maybe 7 feet, with dark blue skin that seemed to shine in the sunlight. Her body was built like a hunter. Strong shoulders, long arms, and legs that moved with perfect balance. But it was her eyes that caught Marcus's attention. They were bright yellow, like a cat's eyes, and they watched everything around her with sharp intelligence. Her name was Zix Thara, according to the information they had received. She was a representative of her people, chosen to meet with the humans and decide if they could be trusted. Marcus walked forward slowly, keeping his hands where she could see them. He stopped about 10 feet away and tried to remember the greeting, phrase he had practiced. "Greetings, honored Zix Thara," he said in broken Veltar language. "We come in peace." The alien warrior's eyes narrowed. Her head tilted to one side, and Marcus heard a low growling sound coming from her throat. Something was wrong, but he didn't know what. Zix Thara suddenly crouched down, her muscles tensing like a spring ready to snap. Her hands, which Marcus now saw ended in sharp claws, spread wide at her sides. The growling got louder. "Doctor, get back," Officer Williams warned, reaching for his weapon, but Marcus held up his hand. "Wait. Maybe she's just nervous. This is new for all of us." He took another step forward and tried again. "We want to be friends with your people." That was when everything went wrong. Zix Thara let out a sound that was part roar, part scream. She jumped forward with speed that Marcus didn't think was possible. Her claws were aimed straight at his chest. Marcus threw himself to the side, but he wasn't fast enough. Zix Thara's claws caught his shoulder, tearing through his jacket and into his skin. Pain shot through his body as he hit the ground hard. "Stop!" Officer Williams shouted, pointing his weapon at the alien warrior. "Back away!" But Zix Thara wasn't listening. In her mind, Marcus's approach had been a challenge. In Veltar culture, when another predator entered your territory and came toward you, it meant they wanted to fight for control. His words of peace meant nothing. His actions spoke of war. She jumped toward Marcus again. But this time, Officer Williams fired his stun weapon. The blue energy hit Zix Thara in the chest, making her stumble backward. She shook her head and roared again, even angrier than before. "Get to the shuttle!" Williams yelled. Marcus tried to stand, but his injured shoulder made it difficult. Blood was running down his arm, and he felt dizzy. Officer Johnson grabbed him and helped him toward their ship. Behind them, Zixthera was getting back on her feet. The stun weapon had slowed her down but not stopped her. She ran toward her own ship, probably to get weapons or call for help. "We need to leave now," Williams said as they reached the shuttle. But as their shuttle lifted off from the planet's surface, warning alarms started going off. Marcus looked out the window and saw Zixthera's ship rising into the air behind them. It was following them, and it looked angry. "She's trying to shoot us down," Johnson said, checking his instruments. The alien ship fired some kind of energy. Weapon. It missed their shuttle but hit one of the engines. Smoke started filling the cabin, and Marcus felt the shuttle spinning out of control. "Hold on!" Williams shouted. Through the spinning and the smoke, Marcus saw that they weren't the only ones in trouble. Zixthera's ship had been damaged, too, probably when she fired her weapon too close to the shuttle. Both ships were falling toward the planet's surface, trailing smoke and sparks. Marcus pressed himself against his seat and closed his eyes. This wasn't how first contact was supposed to happen. They had come in peace, but somehow everything had gone terribly wrong. Now both he and the alien warrior were going to crash on an unknown planet, far from their people and help. The shuttle hit the ground with a sound like thunder. Marcus felt himself thrown forward against his safety belt. His head hit something hard, and bright lights exploded behind his eyes. The last thing he remembered before darkness took him was the sound of metal bending and breaking, and somewhere in the distance another crash as the alien ship hit the ground. When the noise finally stopped, the forest was quiet again, too smoking. Ships lay broken in clearings half a mile apart. In each ship, a survivor slowly began to wake up, alone and injured, on a world that neither of them understood. Marcus woke up with his head pounding like a drum. The shuttle was dark and quiet except for the occasional spark from broken equipment. He tried to move and immediately regretted it. Pain shot through his shoulder where the alien's claws had torn his skin. His whole body felt like he had been hit by a truck. Slowly, carefully, he unbuckled his safety belt and looked around. Officer Williams was hanging forward in his seat, not moving. Marcus reached over and checked for a pulse. Nothing. Johnson was the same. Marcus closed his eyes and took a deep breath. He was alone. The shuttle door was bent, but still worked. Marcus pushed it open and stepped outside into the alien forest. The sun was setting, painting the sky in colors of orange and purple. Beautiful. But he had no time to enjoy the view. He needed to find shelter, food, and water if he wanted to survive. His shoulder was still bleeding, so the first thing he did was tear strips from his shirt to make a bandage. It wasn't perfect, but it would have to do. Then he grabbed what supplies he could from the damaged shuttle: a small medical kit, some emergency food bars, a water purifier, and his research equipment. As darkness fell, Marcus found a small cave in the rocks near a stream. It would keep him safe from any dangerous animals that might come out at night. He ate one of his precious food bars and tried to think about what to do next. 3 days passed. Marcus fell into a routine that kept him busy and helped him not think about his dead crewmates or his situation. Each morning he would explore a different part of the forest, looking for things he could eat and places that might be useful. He used his research training to test plants carefully, trying small amounts first to make sure they wouldn't poison him. The planet was amazing, from a scientific point of view. There were fruits that grew in spirals, flowers that changed color when touched, and insects that seemed to glow in the dark. Marcus found himself making notes about everything he saw, even though he might never get the chance to share his discoveries with other scientists. On the 3rd day, while he was testing some purple berries near a clearing, Marcus saw something. That made him freeze. Across the open space, maybe 200 yards away, was another crash site. Black metal was scattered between the trees, and smoke was still rising from the wreckage. The alien's ship. Marcus crouched down behind a large tree and watched. After a few minutes, he saw movement. Zixthera stepped out from behind the broken ship, and Marcus could see that she was hurt too. She walked with a slight limp, and one of her arms hung at an odd angle, but she was alive, and she was still dangerous. Over the next few hours, Marcus observed her from a safe distance. She was clearly a skilled hunter and warrior, but she was struggling with this alien environment, just like he was. Her movements were different from the smooth, confident way she had moved during their first meeting. Now she seemed uncertain, testing the air and looking around constantly. Marcus watched as Zixathera tried to catch one of the small, deer-like animals that lived in the forest. On her home world, she was probably an excellent hunter. But here, the animals didn't behave the way she expected. They could sense her coming from much farther away, and they ran in directions that surprised her. After several failed attempts, she gave up and returned to her ship, clearly frustrated. By the fourth day, Marcus could see that the alien warrior was getting weaker. Her movements were slower, and she spent more time resting. He realized that while he had been learning which plants were safe to eat, she had been trying to hunt animals that were too fast and smart for her hunting methods. She was starving. Marcus found this discovery troubling. This was the same alien who had tried to kill him just a few days ago. His shoulder still ached from her claws, and he had nightmares about her yellow eyes and sharp teeth. By all logic, he should be happy that his enemy was getting weaker. It made him safer. But he wasn't happy. He was worried. From his hiding spots, Marcus continued to watch Zixathera. He saw her try to eat some of the same berries he had tested earlier. Even from a distance, he could see her spit them out quickly. They were bitter and would make her sick if she ate too many. She tried different plants, but most of them were either poisonous or had no nutrition. The worst part was her pride. Even though she was clearly hungry and weak, Zixathera never showed it openly. She held her head high and walked with as much strength as she could manage. She didn't beg the forest for mercy or cry out in frustration, even when Marcus could see that she was suffering. On the fifth day, Marcus made a discovery that changed everything. Deep in the forest, he found a grove of trees that produced large, nutritious roots. The roots were easy to dig up, safe to eat, and very filling. He could live on these roots for weeks, maybe months. His survival was no longer in question. That night, as he cooked the roots over his small fire, Marcus found himself thinking about the alien warrior. She was probably less than a mile away, hungry and getting weaker every day. Her ship's supplies were likely running out, if they hadn't run out already. Marcus stared into the flames and wrestled with a decision that seemed impossible. Every logical part of his mind said to leave her alone. She had attacked him without warning or reason. She was dangerous. If their situations were reversed, would she help him? Probably not. But Marcus wasn't Zixathera. He was human, and humans had something that other species might not understand. They had the ability to help others, even their enemies, simply because it was the right thing to do. As the fire burned low and the alien stars appeared overhead, Marcus made his choice. Tomorrow, he would do something that might get him killed, or might change everything. He would share his food with the warrior who had tried to end his life. The decision scared him, but it also felt right in a way he couldn't explain. Maybe this was what made humans different from other species in the galaxy. Maybe this was their true strength. Marcus spent the entire next morning cooking roots and preparing clean water. His hands shook as he worked, not from fear, but from the weight of what he was about to do. He was going to feed the enemy who had tried to kill him. Even thinking about it seemed crazy. He waited until the sun began to set. Zixathera would be in her ship, resting and trying to save her energy. Marcus carefully packed the cooked roots in large leaves, making sure they would stay warm. He also filled a container with filtered water from the stream. The meal was simple, but it was nutritious and safe. Moving through the forest like a ghost, Marcus used every skill he had learned over the past week. He stepped carefully around branches, avoided areas where the ground might make noise, and stayed in the shadows. His heart pounded so loudly he was sure the whole forest could hear it. As he got closer to the crash site, Marcus could see the alien ship more clearly. It was bigger than he had thought, but most of it was broken beyond repair. Pieces of black metal were scattered everywhere, and there was a large hole in one side where the ship had hit a tree during the crash. Marcus found a good hiding spot, behind a fallen log, and watched the ship for almost an hour. Finally, just as the last light was fading from the sky, he saw Zixathara come out. She moved slowly, checking the area around her ship before disappearing back inside. This was his chance. Moving as quietly as possible, Marcus crept toward the ship. He found a spot about 50 feet from the entrance, where she would definitely see the food when she came out again. He placed the wrapped roots and the container of water on a flat rock, then backed away quickly. His job was done. Now he just had to wait and see what would happen. Marcus didn't sleep that night. He stayed, hidden in the trees, watching the alien ship through the darkness. When morning came, he saw Zixathara step outside, just like she did every day. She took a few steps, then stopped suddenly. She had seen the food. Even from a distance, Marcus could see the change in her body language. She dropped into a fighting crouch, her head turning back and forth as she searched for enemies. Her claws extended, and that low, growling sound echoed through the forest. For several minutes, Zixathara didn't move toward the food. She circled around it, keeping her distance, trying to understand what was happening. Marcus could almost see her thinking. Was this a trap? Was someone trying to poison her? Why would an enemy leave food for her? Finally, hunger won over caution. Zixathara approached the rock carefully, ready to run or fight at the first sign of danger. She sniffed the food, and Marcus could see. Her yellow eyes widened with surprise. It smelled safe. It smelled good. Then came the explosion. With a roar of rage that made birds fly from the trees, Zixathara grabbed the food and threw it as hard as she could. The cooked roots scattered across the ground, and the water container smashed against a tree. She stood over the mess, breathing heavily, her whole body shaking with anger. Marcus felt his heart sink. He had risked everything to help her, and she had destroyed his gift. But as he watched, he began to understand why she was so angry. In her culture, accepting food from an enemy was probably seen as weakness or surrender. By offering her food, he had insulted her pride. Zixathara stood there for a long time, staring at the scattered food. Then she kicked at one of the roots and walked back to her ship. But Marcus noticed something important. She kept looking back over her shoulder at the food she had thrown away. Hours passed. The sun moved across the sky, and still Zixathara stayed in her ship. Marcus was about to give up and return to his cave when he saw movement again. The alien warrior came out of her ship and walked to where she had thrown the food. She looked around carefully, making sure no one was watching. Then slowly she began to pick up the roots that weren't too dirty or damaged. She examined each piece, smelled it, and put the good ones in a pile. When she was done, she gathered them all and took them back to her ship. Pride had made her destroy the gift, but hunger had made her retrieve what she could save. Marcus smiled for the first time in days. She had eaten his food, even if she was too proud to admit it. Maybe there was hope after all. The next morning, Marcus prepared another meal. This time he was more careful. He cooked the roots until they were perfect, and he wrapped them in the softest leaves he could find. He also included some of the sweet berries he had discovered and fresh water in a different container. Again, he waited until evening to deliver the food. Again, he placed it on the same rock and retreated to his hiding place to watch. This time, Zixathara's reaction was different. When she found the food, she didn't roar or throw it away. Instead, she stood very still, looking at the carefully prepared meal. Marcus could see her struggling with herself, her pride fighting against her need to survive. After a few minutes, she picked up the food and water and carried them back to her ship without ceremony. She didn't eat them outside where Marcus might see her, but later that night, he noticed that the containers had been placed neatly beside the ship's entrance, empty and clean. This became their routine. Every evening, Marcus would leave food for Zixthara. Every morning, he would find the empty containers waiting for him. Neither of them spoke or showed themselves to the other, but a strange kind of communication was developing between them. Marcus began to notice changes in the alien warrior. She moved with more energy, and her hunting attempts became more focused and intelligent. She was learning about the planet's animals, just like he had learned about its plants. More importantly, she seemed less angry and more curious about her mysterious benefactor. On the 10th day of their strange relationship, something different happened. Marcus approached the rock where he always left the food and found something waiting for him. It was a piece of fruit he had never seen before, bright red with blue spots and perfectly ripe. Beside it was a simple tool made from sharp stone and twisted vines. Zixthara had left him a gift. Marcus picked up the fruit and examined it carefully. It looked safe, and when he tasted it, it was the sweetest thing he had eaten since arriving on the planet. The tool was beautifully made, perfect for cutting plants or preparing food. She was sharing with him, just as he had shared with her. That night, as Marcus prepared the evening meal, he felt something he hadn't expected. He wasn't just helping an enemy survive anymore. Somehow, without either of them saying a word, they had become something else. They had become partners in survival, but Marcus also knew that this fragile understanding could be broken easily. They were still strangers from different worlds, with different ways of thinking and living. The real test would come when they finally had to face each other again, not as hidden benefactors, but as two beings trying to survive together on an alien world. That test was coming sooner than either of them expected. The storm came without warning on the 15th day. Marcus was collecting berries near the stream when he noticed the sky getting dark very quickly. The wind picked up, bending the trees and making a sound like a train rushing through the forest. He had seen storms on Earth, but this was different. The air itself seemed angry. Lightning flashed across the sky, followed by thunder so loud it shook the ground. Large drops of rain began falling, but this wasn't normal rain. The water was slightly purple and felt warm against his skin. Marcus didn't know if it was safe, so he ran toward the cave system he had discovered a few days earlier. The caves were deeper than his original shelter and would protect him better from the strange storm. As he reached the entrance, another flash of lightning lit up the forest, and Marcus saw something that made his heart skip. Across the clearing, Zixthara was also running toward the same caves, her injured arm clutched against her side. They both stopped at the cave entrance at the same time. For a moment, neither moved. They stared at each other, remembering their first violent meeting, but also thinking about the food they had shared over the past weeks. Marcus could see uncertainty in Zixthara's yellow eyes. She was clearly thinking the same thing he was. Should she trust the human who had been feeding her, or should she find another shelter? The decision was made for them. A massive bolt of lightning struck a tree just 20 feet away, splitting it in half with a crack like a cannon shot. Both Marcus and Zixthara dove into the cave at the same time, seeking safety from the dangerous storm. Inside, they pressed themselves against opposite walls of the cave, as far apart as the space would allow. The cave was about 15 feet wide and stretched back into darkness. Marcus turned on his small flashlight, and the light revealed rocky walls covered with strange crystal formations that sparkled like stars. For an hour, they sat in silence, listening to the storm rage outside. The thunder was constant now, and the purple rain fell so hard it sounded like drums beating on the rocks. Neither human nor alien moved or spoke, but Marcus noticed that Zixthara kept glancing at him when she thought he wasn't looking. Then disaster struck again. A tremendous crash shook the entire cave system. Rocks fell from the ceiling, and Marcus heard something that made his blood turn cold, the sound of boulders rolling and grinding against each other. He shined his flashlight toward the cave entrance just in time to see it disappear behind a wall of fallen stone. They were trapped. Zixathera jumped to her feet and ran to where the entrance had been. She pushed against the rocks, trying to move them, but they were too heavy even for her alien strength. Marcus joined her, and together they examined the blockage. Some of the stones were huge, bigger than both of them combined. "We need to work together," Marcus said. Though he wasn't sure she understood his words, Zixathera looked at him for a long moment. Then she nodded and pointed to a smaller rock near the top of the pile. If they could move that one, it might cause others to shift and create an opening. Working together, they pushed and pulled at the rocks. Marcus used a metal bar from his equipment as a lever, while Zixathera used her greater strength to move the heavier stones. It was slow, difficult work, made harder by the fact that they couldn't really communicate except through gestures and simple words. Hours passed. They made some progress, creating a small gap near the top of the blockage, but it wasn't big enough for either of them to crawl through. Worse, their efforts had made some of the rocks less stable. One wrong move could cause the whole pile to shift and crush them both. As they worked, something interesting began to happen. Marcus started to understand some of Zixathera's gestures and sounds. When she pointed at a rock and made a low growling noise, it meant, "Dangerous, don't touch." When she tilted her head and made a softer sound, it meant, "Good idea," or "Yes." She seemed to be learning his signals too, understanding when he meant "careful" or "help me with this." On the second day of being trapped, Marcus shared his water and food with Zixathera without hesitation. She accepted it without the anger or pride he had seen before. When his flashlight began to dim, she produced a device from her ship that created a soft blue light. They were surviving together. On the third day, Marcus made a discovery that changed everything. While examining the back of the cave, he found that it connected to a whole system of tunnels. Some of them might lead to other exits, but they were narrow and dangerous. He would need Zixathera's help to explore them safely, using drawings in the dirt and simple gestures. Marcus explained what he had found. Zixathera studied the tunnel entrance carefully, then looked at Marcus with something that might have been respect. She understood that he was suggesting they work as a team to escape, not just from the cave, but from the planet itself. That night, as they prepared to sleep in the cave, something remarkable happened. Marcus was shivering from the cold, and Zixathera noticed. Without a word, she moved closer to him and shared her body heat. Her alien skin was naturally warm, and soon Marcus felt comfortable for the first time since entering the cave. "Thank you," Marcus whispered. In response, Zixathera made a soft sound that he had never heard before. It wasn't a growl or a roar. It was almost musical, like a lullaby. Marcus realized she was trying to say, "You're welcome," in her own language. School. Next morning, they began exploring the tunnels together. Zixathera went first, using her natural hunting instincts to detect dangers, while Marcus followed with the light and his scientific knowledge of cave systems. They moved slowly and carefully, testing each step. In the narrow passages, they had to help each other constantly. When Zixathera got stuck in a tight spot, Marcus helped guide her through. When Marcus couldn't reach a high ledge, Zixathera lifted him up with her strong arms. They were no longer just two survivors sharing the same space. They were partners. After hours of crawling through dark tunnels, they finally saw daylight ahead. Working together, they cleared away the rocks and branches blocking a small exit and crawled out into the forest. The storm had passed, leaving the air clean and fresh. They stood in the sunlight, looking at each other with new understanding. Marcus saw that Zixathera was no longer the fierce warrior who had attacked him weeks ago. She was still strong and dangerous, but now there was wisdom in her yellow eyes and something that looked like friendship. Zixathara looked at Marcus and saw something her people had never taught her existed, an enemy who had chosen to be kind instead of cruel, who had shared instead of conquered. In her culture, such behavior was impossible to understand, but now she was beginning to see its power. Without words, they both understood that everything had changed between them. They were no longer enemies trapped on an alien world. They were allies, and together they might actually find a way home. 3 weeks after escaping from the cave, Marcus and Zixathara had built something neither of them had expected, a partnership that worked. They had created a comfortable camp halfway between their two crash sites, using materials from both ships to build shelter and tools. Marcus used his scientific knowledge to find the best food sources and create useful inventions. Zixathara used her hunting skills to catch fresh meat and her warrior training to protect them from dangerous animals. They had even developed their own way of communicating, mixing simple words from both languages with gestures and drawings. Every morning, they worked together to improve their camp. Every evening, they shared their meals and tried to teach each other about their different worlds. Marcus learned that Veltar society was based on strength and honor, where showing weakness could mean death. Zixathara learned that humans valued cooperation and kindness, even toward enemies. On this particular morning, Marcus was working on a project he had been planning for days, a signal beacon that might reach passing ships. He had combined parts from both their ships to create a device that could send messages into space. If it worked, it might bring rescue. Zixathara was sharpening her hunting tools when she suddenly stopped and looked up at the sky. Her hearing was much better than Marcus's, and she had detected something he couldn't yet hear. "Ships coming," she said in the mixed language they had developed. Marcus looked up and saw 2 bright dots moving across the blue sky. As they got closer, he could see that one ship was human-built, round and silver. The other was Veltar, black and blade-shaped like Zixathara's crashed vessel. "Rescue," Marcus said, but he felt worried instead of happy. "Both our people." Zixathara nodded, understanding his concern. If human and Veltar ships met in space above this planet, there might be another fight. Their peoples didn't understand each other any better now than they had a month ago. The ships landed in the same clearing where Marcus and Zixathara had first met, but on opposite sides. Marcus could see armed soldiers getting out of both ships, weapons ready, expecting to find either victory or tragedy. "We go together," Zixathara said firmly. "Show them." Marcus understood. They needed to show both groups of rescuers that humans and Veltar could work together peacefully. Walking side by side, they made their way toward the clearing. Captain Rodriguez stepped out of the human ship, his face showing relief when he saw Marcus alive. But his expression changed to shock when he noticed Zixathara walking beside him, not as a prisoner, but as a companion. "Dr. Chen, step away from the alien," Captain Rodriguez called out. "We'll handle this." From the other side of the clearing, a group of Veltar warriors emerged from their ship. They were larger than Zixathara, with darker skin and more visible scars. The one in front, who seemed to be their leader, let out a roar when he saw Zixathara with Marcus. "Zixathara!" the leader called in the Veltar language. "You bring shame to our people. Why do you walk with this weak creature?" Marcus felt Zixathara tense beside him, but she didn't move away. Instead, she called back to her people in a voice that carried across the clearing. "This human saved my life when he could have let me die. He shared food when I was hungry, water when I was thirsty. He fought beside me when danger came. He is not weak. He is strong in ways we never understood." The Veltar warriors looked confused and angry. In their culture, enemies were meant to be conquered or destroyed, not helped. The idea that someone would aid an enemy made no sense to them. Captain Rodriguez wasn't any happier. "Dr. Chen, this creature attacked you. Why are you protecting it?" Marcus stepped forward, positioning himself between the 2 groups of armed soldiers. His voice was calm but strong as he spoke. "Her name is Zixathara, and she's not a creature. She's a person, just like us. but from a different world with different ways. Yes, she attacked me at first, but that was because we didn't understand each other. Once we learned to communicate and work together, everything changed. He gestured toward their camp, visible through the trees. Look at what we built together. Look at how we survived when either of us would have died alone. This is what humans and Veltar can accomplish when we choose cooperation over conflict. Zixthara spoke up, her voice carrying the authority of a warrior, but also something new. The wisdom of someone who had learned from experience. My people believe that strength comes from dominance over others. But I have learned something new from this human. True strength comes from lifting others up, not putting them down. When Marcus shared his food with me, he didn't make himself weaker. He made both of us stronger. She turned to face the Veltar warriors directly. Marcus showed me mercy when I deserved none. He taught me that an enemy can become an ally if we choose understanding over hatred. This is not weakness. This is power we never knew existed. The clearing fell silent. Both groups of rescuers looked uncertain, unsure how to respond to what they were seeing and hearing. This wasn't the scenario they had prepared for. Captain Rodriguez was the first to lower his weapon. Dr. Chen, are you saying you want to work with these aliens? I'm saying we should try, Marcus replied. Zixthara and I proved it's possible. We can learn from each other instead of fighting each other. We can be stronger together than we are apart. The Veltar leader stepped forward, studying Zixthara with new interest. You claim this human made you stronger? Yes, Zixthara answered without hesitation. He taught me that showing kindness to an enemy takes more courage than destroying them. He showed me that sharing strength creates more strength. These are lessons worth learning. Slowly, carefully, the Veltar leader approached Marcus. He stopped, just a few feet away, and studied the human with yellow eyes similar to Zixthara's. Human Marcus, he said in heavily accented but understandable human language. You saved one of our warriors when you could have let her die. This shows honor. This shows strength we did not know your people possessed. Captain Rodriguez looked around at his soldiers, then at the Veltar warriors, and finally at Marcus and Zixthara standing together. After a long moment, he made a decision that would change everything. Perhaps it's time we learned from Dr. Chen's example, he said, extending his hand toward the Veltar leader. I'm Captain Rodriguez of the Earth vessel Endeavor. The alien leader looked at the offered hand for a moment, then reached out with his own clawed hand and grasped it carefully. I am War Leader Kixvin of the Veltar ship Razor Wind. It seems our peoples have much to learn from each other. As the two leaders shook hands, Marcus felt Zixthara place her hand on his shoulder, not the claws of an enemy, but the touch of a friend. Thank you, she said quietly. You showed me that strength shared is strength multiplied. Marcus smiled and placed his own hand over hers. Thank you for teaching me that enemies can become family if we choose to see beyond our differences. Above them, the alien stars were beginning to appear in the darkening sky, looking down on a moment that would be remembered for generations, the day when two species chose understanding over conflict and changed the course of galactic history forever.